Ty, yeah. So I think you have a great opportunity, man. I mean, you have a greater opportunity than, you've just been blessed for whatever reason. It's just a
Hmm.
card you've been dealt.
Right.
And you now have the wherewithal and the understanding to want to go for a little bit more institutional grade assets.
Yeah.
And then you also have the family means to be able to more or less kind of leverage right into it.
Hmm.
So the pro of single family homes when they're owned free and clear, and probably why your dad likes it, is because you can see the net worth right on paper, and it's
Yeah.
really fucking easy to see. So every year for his taxes, he looks right at his net worth and he smiles and he sees all his properties, on his real estate owned schedule. He'll just
Yeah.
see them all. Um,
Yeah.
um, it's not as it won't be as plainly evident when you get into multifamily, because then they're owned in a multi-member LLC, presumably, because you would be a member, I assume.
Right.
And then he's a member, and then you guys each have your ownership interests in the LLC,
Yeah.
and so forth. However, what he won't see, you know, what maybe the lack of like it showing up super cleanly on um paper, the benefit is you get way better cash flow,
Right.
way better cash, where instead of managing 12 roofs, 12 boilers, you
Yeah.
know, like obviously it's going to have to take some convincing of your father, but let's just assume that I was your father for a moment, right? And like
Hmm.
what I would do. Um, I would, what part of town, what area are they in right now?
Houston.
Houston. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, what I was getting ready to say was I would sell them personally. I would just sell the fuck out of all of them and, 1031 into a massive asset. So, if he has, is it safe to say like each one of those 12 homes is worth like maybe 500K, maybe more, 600,
Um,
750?
in Houston area, no, they're probably like between, yeah, like 150 and 200.
Okay.
Yeah, 150
So,
and 250, maybe 300 max. Yeah.
okay, call it 200, and
Yeah.
he's got 12. So, that's
Or
2.4.
yeah, it's like actually he's got like 18. So yeah.
18. Okay. Well, so let's say, you know, after everything, he probably has 2.5 million, let's say, cash.
Mhm.
Then with 2.5 million in cash, you can sit pretty and you can buy, you can lever up and have the bank
Right.
loan you, 60%. You don't even have to come in that high, that super high levered, like 80%, which is what I do. But,
Right.
2.5 million will buy you a $10 million asset.
Right. Yeah.
Fucking nuts, because
Yeah.
Texas happens to be an excellent, excellent rental market where you can
Yeah.
get really sexy stock,
Hmm.
especially once you hit that price point. Now you're talking about a suburban garden rise, a pretty big complex where you have in-house management, and that's the key. Like
Yeah.
smaller shops, you need to have a manager. Once you get to a big enough buy, like what you guys would be able to afford in theory, let's say, um,
Yeah.
that would you would be at scale such that the property itself probably has in-house staff,
Hmm.
like because the rent roll is so big, so it's just part of the expenses, and your expense, it actually makes you more efficient. This game is set up so that it just benefits bigger landlords,
Right.
because like a guy like me, I don't have stock that big. I have 17 units at the moment, and
Hmm.
that's good, but like it's still not at scale. So it still doesn't make sense for me to have my own staff in house.
Right.
But if I owned a 170 unit complex, let's say,
Yeah.
then the rent roll would support having an in-house guy like a super all day who just, fixes shit. And like
Yeah.
that greatly improves my margin. And, on a $10 million asset, you know, you'll probably get a 12% return on your money,
Uh-huh.
on the money that you invested, which is, $300,000 a year.
Yeah.
So do you think he cash flows that right now from homes?
Um, no, he cash flows, after, netting for expenses and everything. Like I want to say it's before taxes, it's probably between 200 and 250.
Hmm.
Yeah. And like, for him, we, our discussions, we really wouldn't sell many of the single family, but that one property in the Bay Area that is just kind of like this orphan property still.
Hmm.
Like, I think he gets like 6 grand a month from that facility, where it's like, but it's 100, it's probably a 1.5 million of value. So like, your return
Right.
on assets is not very much. You
Exactly.
know,
So
with other-
okay. So
yeah,
that I like that where you guys have talked about it and said, you know what, we'll keep the single family. And by the
yeah,
way, and right, because you're not netting as much proportionately relative to the value of the asset. Yeah, it's essentially sunken money in there to have the equity in there. So you sell it
right,
and you take
yeah,
that. I think you said 1.5, and that'll buy you a $4 million asset.
yeah,
1.5 million, and just assuming you make a 10% return on that, that's 150K
right,
a year, which is double what he's getting right now.
right,
And the reality is that that's going to wet the beak.
right,
After he sees that, he's going to say, "All right, well, you know what? This home, I think we can sell this one, and maybe you keep
exactly,
the most valuable 4 homes, and you sell,
right,
14, and it'll probably happen over time.
yeah,
But the reason, like here's the reason to sell, or here's the selling point, right? In my opinion, is
mhm,
no amount of time is going to turn 1 unit into 10 units.
right,
And when a market appreciates, it appreciates on a per unit basis,
mhm,
right? So if you guys picked an excellent market, but the thing is you guys only benefited to the extent that you have units.
right,
And so if he's only sitting on 18 units, what good is it, to sit on a great fucking market if, you know, you're limiting your ability to capture some of that because your stock is limited. It's like
right,
picking a once in a lifetime stock, let's say. Maybe not once in a lifetime, but it's picking a really great stock, but you bought 10 shares
right,
instead of having 100 or 1,000, where
right,
you would have benefited,
yeah,
exponentially. So
mhm,
that's the primary reason to buy commercial grade assets, is because of the sale. So not
yeah,
only is the cash flow more protected, because single family homes, if you have a vacancy, one vacancy, you're 100% vacant.
right,
One vacancy hurts you way less. Also, instead of dealing with 18 boilers and roofs, you're dealing with one centralized roof, and effectively you aggregate your costs across all your units.
yeah,
But also, the most important part is, and you know this, but it's the valuation method. So
mhm,
single family homes are based on comparables. What is
right,
Susie's house down the block selling? And right now in coronavirus, you know, it's probably a shitty time to sell those homes, which is why I was going to take a step back earlier when I was like, if I was your dad, I would do X. Um,
mhm,
but assuming, whenever the market recuperates,
yeah,
it's good to sell them because, in my opinion, because the value of your home is always going to be based on the neighbor's home. And that's kind of based on, like, the neighborhood economics and kind of where it is.
yeah,
Whereas the valuation method for commercial properties is income based,
yeah,
and that's completely within your control. So
mhm,
I like that, because then you're not waiting on Susie, the homeowner, to swoon over her home and want to pay a ridiculous amount, and or maybe not, because maybe, let's say, the neighborhood suffers. Now it's
yeah,
based on what's the money that it makes.
right, exactly,
Right. And when you can buy an asset, strategically hold it, and increase the NOI 20% over 5 years,
mhm,
and you've stabilized the property. So now you're getting a lower cap rate, and you also have a higher NOI. That's when you really, and let's say if you were fortunate in picking a good market, that's a triple compounding of value. Greater
right,
NOI, lower cap rate because you stabilize the property, and market appreciated. That makes for
mhm,
really handsome exits down the road. That's how these families get really wealthy.
yeah, yeah, totally, yeah, no, I appreciate all that, like, because that's been sort of my framework of thinking. So just to pick your brain a little bit, what markets have you targeted mainly here, just in Northeast? I remember you mentioning something about like, um, maybe an area outside Philly, or like a major metro area.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And just kind of, yeah, like, have you invested in New York at all, Harlem?
I have
Um,
not invested in New York. I just haven't been able to make sense of the returns.
yeah,
Um, and you know, your dad might like it because your dad's a little bit more old school. And so
Mhm.
he knows like markets that are stable are stable are stable.
Yeah.
And so like maybe he would be okay with forfeiting some of those cash flows. But for me, as a guy who's kind of in growth mode, it's just a tough thing to justify,
Mhm.
sinking your cash into an illiquid asset and, getting a 3% return. You
Right.
might as well buy bonds and avoid the headache of being a landlord. So,
Yeah.
I buy personally in the Lehigh Valley.
Mhm.
But I liked Hartford, but the locale as a whole is going through some tough times because insurance left.
Yeah.
Down south, I really like Jacksonville, Florida.
Really?
I think Jacksonville is a great market. The
Mhm.
returns are there. It's the climate. What I don't like about the north is like the winter is just so harsh on your stock.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, it's very hard on your buildings. The water gets in anywhere, and then in the wintertime, it just freezes, cracks, expands, and it just fucks a lot of shit up.
Yeah.
So Jacksonville is a great market because you get the advantage of no income tax in that state, and
Mhm.
I think one of only 4 states that do that, and also the stock is big, and that's
Yeah.
one thing that Allentown doesn't have is like the stock is smaller. Like people compete for like 12-unit deals here like
Uh-huh.
heavily. Whereas in,
Yeah.
in Jacksonville, that's a small deal. In Jacksonville, it's pretty normal to find 20, 30, 40, 50 units. So
Mhm.
that's what I do look for that large in part too now is like bigger stock. Tampa is another great market.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I've heard a lot of buzz about Atlanta, but there's just a lot of big players there. So I would probably stay away.
Right.
North Carolina is a great market, like
Uh-huh.
Charlotte and Durham, Raleigh Durham area. And
Yeah.
also Baltimore. Baltimore is where I'm looking at sinking my teeth in right now.
Mm. Okay. What about Birmingham or like Nashville? Kind of these like
Yep,
second tier, third tier markets.
I would do them personally.
Yeah.
The things I look for, probably similar to what you look for, but I look for population growth
Mhm.
because for me, population growth is indicative of everything else. If you have a net migration into the area, that means there's jobs. That means there's quality of life. That means the rent's reasonable. That means people want to live there.
Yeah.
Um, and then the other thing is I look for a varied economic sector.
Mhm.
I don't go into any town that like one industry makes up like more than 25 or 30% of an industry's
Yeah.
uh GDP
Right. Yeah.
of a locale's GDP, right? And
Mhm.
you can get that data by you can just Google it. Like all these places have EDCs, like
Yeah.
economic development centers and corporations, which is like
Mhm.
the business arm of the government of the local government, and it's
Yeah.
their job to promote tourism and visit Nashville, and so they always put out these stats like Nashville, and so you'll see their if you look at their real estate sector data, you'll see one very important thing to look at, by the way, is the
Mhm.
absorption rate. So
Right.
take a look at the supply. Usually they'll forecast what supply is coming online, and
Mhm.
you can usually the way they know, and this is hard data. The way they know is from actual permits filed. So
Yeah.
they'll get permits filed that from developers that plan to bring X amount of units online,
Yeah.
and so just sometimes you go in these they still end up being good bets, but you just go through a period where you suffer because they oversupply and there's not enough demand. So they bring their prices down. And when you have
Mhm.
when you have that new stock bring their prices down, it's a little bit harder for guys like you and I that are buying, existing older stock from the 1980s. Let's say we're buying
Right.
B tier stock, C tier stock. Sometimes I buy C plus.
Mhm.
I buy C and
Yeah.
I convert it into like a B. I buy C
Yeah.
plus and convert it into a B. Um,
Okay.
and because that's where I've kind of identified as a sweet spot for me at the moment, given my price point,
For sure. Yeah.
right? Like I bought my portfolio now, the 2 buildings together, I bought them for uh, uh, 900, and I just reappraised them, and they're worth 1.9.
Wow. Yeah.
And I put 160 into one and 300 into another. So I bought it for 900, but I put 450 in. So my total all in was 1.4, but I
Yeah.
appraised for 1.9. So I still made a $500,000 in equity.
Mhm.
and I'm getting ready to refinance next week. So I'm going to
Yeah.
pull all the money out that I put in anyway.
Right.
So I'm putting all my money out. So I really
Mhm.
have, the $1 million in equity.
Yeah.
And you can get those pops, and your dad will be very pleased about that.
Mhm. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. No, yeah, thank you for that. And what about, with Harlem Capital, did you guys do a few syndicate deals, real estate syndicate deals?
Invested via me. So the group never really did real estate formally.
Mhm.
But I always have. So
Got it.
I syndicated those deals, and then we did some deals just as a group. So we
Mhm.
call it an HCP angel deal, but it was really my deal.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so, what's it like? And were those just in different markets or um,
Allentown.
Allentown?
Yep.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can give you all the insight you need for the angel syndicate deals if you want to get into the mechanics or whatever.
Hmm. Yeah, because I think I have like a few friends that I trust, guys that played baseball with, where kind of we just have same values and like-minded, that would want them, like, if we can make it bigger,
Hmm.
and join forces, then I would want to be, yeah, just have the right mechanics to
Yeah.
pitch it
Yeah,
to
sure.
them. Yeah.
So the way to do it is you set up a so you all right. So here's how I do it. I have a personal LLC that is what I use to invest in and out of real estate with. Right? I have
Yeah.
like my LLC for media, I have my LLC for a bunch of stuff. I have my own personal LLC that I use to invest in stuff, right? But
Yeah.
then you don't invite them at that level. That's just your personal vehicle. You
Right.
create a single asset LLC whose sole
Mhm.
purpose is just to hold the asset. And that
Yeah.
asset is a multi-member LLC,
Hmm.
and you take your investors directly on that entity so that you're fair with them and they actually own what they own in the property.
Yeah.
And you make it, there's two class of members. There's
Hmm.
class A and class B. Class
Hmm.
A is otherwise aka general partner,
Yeah.
and then class B is aka limited partner.
Yeah.
And class A has voting and distribution rights.
Hmm.
Class B only has distribution rights.
Right.
In our case, we did grant class B investors to be able to vote on major items, which
Hmm.
was anytime you change a class A member or if you were to buy and sell an asset. And we made it subject to, like, I guess, majority vote, but we own we made it so that, like, really we couldn't be overridden. But I wouldn't even add that in anymore. That was just
Yeah.
my first time and I was being nice, but like now having gone through this rope, I wouldn't do that anymore. And
Yeah.
what we do is we do an 8% preferred return to all money in, so including yours, including your
Hmm.
money in. And then from there, it's a 35-65 split where the LPs make 65 and the GP makes 35. That only works if you buy. Um, so that's like fund economics, right? But the reason that works in a fund is because the GP puts up 1% of the total fund. So for HCP on a $40 million fund, we put up 400 grand, split up
Hmm.
between four partners. We each put up 100 grand.
Yeah.
But in a build, so when that works on the fund level. When you look at the deal by deal level, you have to.
Hmm.
I'm still trying to find the sweet spot, but one thing you'll have to juggle is you
Yeah.
want enough ownership in the deal, right? Like there's no way I'm just going to put up 1% of the total equity in the building because I want more. I want equity in the building.
Right.
So as a result, I target like 20% on a
Hmm.
big deal where
Yeah.
the GP owns 20% of the deal, right? But then after 8% return to everyone, so after everyone makes that initial hurdle rate, even though
Hmm.
you put up 20% of the deal, now you're making 35% of the profits.
Right.
So that's the
Hmm.
waterfall. So it's like that's your incentive as a manager to make sure everyone is good and everyone makes their 8%.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, you keep a higher disproportionate split, or a disproportionately higher split, because you hit your goal as a manager.
Right.
And then I have a 20% carried interest on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
So just model out the waterfall for a moment. So when you
Yeah.
sell, the bank goes first, obviously. So any debt.
Yeah.
After that, everyone gets a 1x. So everyone gets a 1x their money.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, whatever's left over, 20% goes to the GP.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, it's distributed pro rata. So the way that works out, it's really GP friendly,
Yeah.
because look at it. You're getting 1x your money back. You're getting a 20% carry off the top that's just for you, for your reward for having done your work.
Yeah.
And then and then you make your pro rata share. So then you dip in your 20% again.
Mm-hmm.
So it ends up, that's really, really GP rich economics. You might have people fight you on it, but I didn't. And you
Yeah.
won't have people fight you until you get to institutional investors that know more.
Right.
But that's a great deal for the common person, an excellent deal, because they'll still end up netting 2 to 2.5x their money over the period of like a 7-year hold.
Yeah.
Where else are they gonna 2.5 or 3x their money over 7 years?
Right.
It's sitting in the bank.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. No, thank you. And then I think last thing would be like loan package. How easy or simple is that? Like just
Great
putting
question.
together packages for
Great
and
question.
finding the right, banker relationships.
Yeah, great question. I use a mortgage broker.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to avoid using a mortgage broker my first time around.
Yeah.
I was like, fuck it, I'm not paying him 2%. The total loan, I was getting $500,000 loan, that's 10 grand. I was like, I'm not paying him 10 grand. And
Mm-hmm.
I went direct, but you start to see that mortgage brokers worth their weight in gold if you find a good one,
Yeah.
because they just do all the shopping for you.
Yeah.
They package you. So they'll
Mm-hmm.
pull the credit of whomever the guarantors are going to be. They'll pull your credit. They'll get your net worth statement. They'll get this. They'll get that. They'll do everything. And then the best thing is, there's two good things. One, he pulls your credit and one time, so you don't have to go and get pulled every time,
Yeah.
right? But also B, he has direct relationships with these people for years.
Mm-hmm.
He or she, right?
Yeah.
Because she has done several deals with them and has made them money before and has found them good borrowers.
Yeah.
So they get to the point where, especially if you're entering a market where you're not local, and like Allentown is like that. People are like, oh, he's not local. I actually switched my ID to Allentown just so that people stop giving me shit so I can get the best money.
Really? Wow.
I don't think you have to do that, but the point is, that's how committed I was to getting the best money. But the point
Yeah.
is, these people, your mortgage broker will go straight up to the banker and say,
Mm-hmm.
hey, what's up, man? Listen, I got the guy for you. Great
Yeah.
package. And they will shop it to like 5-7 different lenders,
Mm-hmm.
and drive it all the way to the point where someone shoots you a term sheet.
Yeah.
And the great news is that I don't know how comfortable your father is guaranteeing debt, but
Mm-hmm.
you will definitely need it right now with today's climate. No questions asked.
Yeah.
Right now, they're placing a high emphasis on income, credit, and net worth.
Mm-hmm.
And then the property has to meet their underwriting requirements, which is usually 1.3 DSCR, which is 1.3 debt service coverage
Right.
ratio.
Yeah.
So as long as the property makes $1.30 for every dollar of debt, which you should be able to find deals in that range, you're
Mm-hmm.
good. As long as the appraisal checks out, you're good. You'll get your insurance on it. All that stuff is pretty standard.
Yeah.
But for big assets like that, they definitely look for net worth, and that's where your dad's single family homes are actually going to help.
Yeah.
Because they'll ask for his REO, real estate owned schedule, and he'll
Mm-hmm.
just show boom, 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 fucking 12 houses owned free and clear. Be like, okay, this guy's the real deal, and his
Yeah.
son is managing. Awesome.
Yeah.
You guys will get money. There's no doubt in my mind. Not a single doubt in my mind.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, man. Yeah, and I appreciate it. I think that kind of answered all my questions. Where you calling in from?
I'm in my property right now in PA.
in PA. So you're living in and yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
living in right now through the COVID season, but I'm also here like I'm hungry. I'm looking for more deals, man.
yeah.
I can't buy enough. I'm so frustrated. I feel like that like earlier when
Mhm.
I was like I found my property values went up so much
Yeah.
even just by sitting on them, and it's like, fuck, I need more stock. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to convince the Korean guy that I was telling you about. I'm trying to convince him to sell me his building, man. He's got a lot, and they're all right on my block.
Uh-huh.
Where a couple blocks down, I have another one,
Yeah.
and I would love to be able to control, my 17 that I have there plus his 30. That would get me to 50 units in one block, and that turns it into a portfolio on the block.
Right. Yeah.
Very sexy, very. So I'm working on that right now.
That'd be sick. Yeah. Yeah. Cool, man. And then so you're originally from New York area.
Yeah, yeah, I live in New York, yeah.
Yeah. So your family lives in New York too?
Yeah, a good portion of them. My mom and dad live here. All my
Mhm.
siblings live there. I have 2 brothers and my sister that
Okay.
and cousins, and everyone lives in New York, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. What's up? And then another unrelated question, because I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to move next. Have you ever lived in Harlem?
Yeah. Yeah, I lived in
Yeah.
Harlem for 10 years.
Okay. Where would you, if I was looking to move there, where would you
What's your
suggest living?
what's your price point?
Um, Probably around um 13 to 1700. And
Mm,
I'm
are you
thinking,
comfortable having roommates?
yeah, I'll probably at least one roommate.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Okay. So then that makes it doable. I mean, it's hard. 1,700, you can get a studio for 1,700 in a
Yeah.
neighborhood called, Lenox Terrace. They have
Hmm.
they have real nice, large, spacious units. People have mixed reviews with them.
Yeah.
I lived in a neighborhood called the Savoy. If
Uh-huh.
you look up the Savoy, these are 2 very large, they're like 600 unit complexes, and they have
Yeah.
like they're gated, and they have, uh Lenox Terrace has doorman, Savoy does not. That's the big difference. But,
Hmm.
my girlfriend has a dog, so, like, it was helpful for us to walk the dog and shit like that. And
Yeah.
you just won't get bigger units in all of Harlem for that price point. But
Yeah.
it's not as close to, like, the supermarkets, so that was a pain in the ass. So if I were
Yeah.
you, I would check the strip, on Frederick Douglass from 110th all the way up through 119th or
Hmm.
121st. So
Yeah.
Frederick Douglass between 110th and 121st. That's gonna be a lot of your, good stuff. And there's a specific company called, their, like, consumer facing name is gonofee.com,
Hmm.
and their realty name is K&R Realty, and their
Okay.
their development name is Artemis Construction. If you look up Artemis Construction, you'll see their stock. They have beautiful, beautiful deals.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
um, Great stuff. Yeah, I also know a friend who owns 1,000 units over there in Harlem.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think you should be able to with 2 people at 1,700. That's 3,400 for a 2 unit. You'll get a beautiful 2 unit. If you're at
Yeah.
1,500, even at 1,500 a pop, I had a beautiful, beautiful two bed, 2 bath unit in Harlem, paying 2,900.
Yeah.
So I split it up with a roommate. We were
Hmm.
paying 1450 each, and then she moved out, and then my girlfriend moved in, and we split one room and had one room turned into an office. It was like 1,200 square foot. It was a huge unit, really,
Wow.
really nice. Yeah, I
Yeah.
I I like I like living in Harlem a lot, man. I lived there for a decade,
Hmm.
and like then coronavirus came, and I kind of graduated or migrated out here, and
Yeah.
I'm kind of in between. Like I let my lease go over there.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's what it's been, man. Allow me
Yeah.
just a moment.
Sure.
Well, awesome, man. I'm glad this was helpful.
Yeah.
Hit
Thank
me
you.
anytime, man. I want to keep tabs on your journey. If for nothing else other than I love real estate,
Yeah.
and I love talking about it anytime. So
Mhm.
my direct email, you have it.
Yeah.
Hit me up and keep me post it on, the markets that you're looking for. I'm in the early stages of raising a fund right now for real estate. So maybe we do
Mhm.
some deals and stuff. But
Yeah,
yeah, man.
cool. All right. Appreciate it, John. Have a
Be
good
well,
one, man.
man. Have a nice weekend, bro.
Yeah, bro. You too. Later.
Cheers.